What's up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of ASAP, the Afrikan Social Activism Playbook. I am, as always, one of your hosts, T. Jamal, joined by my sister, Michelee. What's going on with you?
Good morning, brother. I'm doing real good this morning. I'm a little sore. I told you I've been working out more, trying to stay consistent with it this time around. But yeah, I'm a little sore, but my spirits are I'm feeling pretty
Yeah,
good
consistency
internally.
is key, and I think physical exercise helps release a lot of that stuff that be rattling around in our brains and
For
can actually
sure.
help us mentally and
Yes.
really unclog a lot of stuff. Yeah. And, it's been difficult to really get out of your own headspace, especially during a
Yeah.
pandemic that encourages people to stay in the house. And
Mm.
so needing that room and that space to like stretch your body out, a lot of that stuff goes together. We talked about how, being African people, seeing life holistically and not segmented like they teach us over in the West, that there's mental health, stop,
Yeah.
hard line, and then there's physical health, stop, hard
Right.
line, and then there's emotional. Now, all of it plays
We're all
into
together.
one another. Yeah.
All one holistic. That's what we need, that holistic approach
And
to
yeah.
everything. Apply that to life.
Whew, we
So
definitely
how
have
are
to get
you
back to that.
feeling? How you doing today?
I am holding on.
Mhm.
I'm doing good. I am feeling physically well. My body is getting very well adjusted to
Mhm.
working like on my feet again. And then I've also been exercising. So, that double physical activity is actually helping. It would seem to be antithetical to what I'm trying to do. Is like, if you're tired, you should get rest. But
Right.
sometimes getting your body used to moving and getting back active, you can actually increase your stamina and,
Mhm.
actually help yourself be better. So yeah,
Right.
I'm doing good. My wife is doing good. My brother just got his negative test for COVID. So we're waiting for my parents to come back negative. So
Yeah.
that's going to be good because
Well, that's good news.
they were not asymptomatic. I just want to put that out there. They had symptoms. They were
Yeah.
sick. My father had a fever. My brother had body aches. My mother had a mixture of just panicking from having it and then losing her sense of smell and all this
Mhm.
other stuff. So it's real, people. So protect yourself, protect others, and don't let it have to come to you or somebody close to you for you to take it seriously.
Yep.
The whole world didn't come together and plan this pandemic. Like, there are
Right.
conspiracies that have happened in this world. Like, I'm not one of those people who just look at a conspiracy as something that is completely out of question. But
Mhm.
a complete global pandemic conspiracy is a bit much, even for me to take in. Like, all these different governments with different
Right.
agendas coming
Right.
together to say, yeah, let's just shut down the world for 6 months or a whole
Exactly.
year. It doesn't make
Because you got to
sense.
think
People
about,
like,
like, exactly, like, the one of the main points I thought about, like, that just automatically wiped that idea out, was that, like, a lot of places rely on tourism and things like that, to
exactly.
stimulate their economy. So why would they automatically disable themselves? Why would they? I don't
Right.
know. It's a little strange,
Yeah.
but the theories we come up with.
people
But
people have to get themselves through the next day, right?
mhm.
And so sometimes you come up with things that don't quite make sense. So
Right.
yeah, we but we're doing good over here. But continuing on with our series of Maroons Within Us, and if you guys missed yesterday's show, Maroon societies were these cultivated, very much well protected, almost like war camps
Mm-hmm.
type societies that were built in the midst of enslavement, not post, like during the actual legalized enslavement of African people. We escaped and fortified ourselves in communities across North America, the Caribbean, as well as South America, and created these maroon societies. But the maroon within us speaks to the fact that there is resistance to these outside sources and influences from Western society, non-African societies, that we resist those things and still have pieces of Africa and elements of our original culture in
Right.
us, in
Right.
the things that we do. And they come
Mhm.
out in different ways. And the significance of that is us being able to identify them when they present themselves so that we can define what they are, so that no one else can tell us that what we're doing is wrong or anti or try to demean our activities. And these things, the maroon within us shows up in the way we see spirituality, the way we
Mhm.
worship God, the way we dance, the way we cook. It comes up in so many different ways. And
Right.
so often we are told as Black people in the diaspora that we don't have culture. Our culture is very much in what we do. And the next step in just doing it is actually acknowledging that these things are a part of our original selves and being able to define what they are, understanding what they mean, so that nobody else can, tell us that it is not as honorable to do it this way, or
Right.
not the correct way to do something, or have us feeling shame based on the things that we naturally do that
Right.
actually mean something to us.
And I would also say, like add in there what we create for ourselves and how we redefine, our own identity and culture and, everything about us. We have that right, and that ability to do so because of the stolen legacy, right? Our stolen traditions and things that we didn't choose to let go of, right? But it's lost. And a lot of us are and have been, for a long time trying to working to rediscover these things. And since a lot of things have been lost, a lot of pieces have been misplaced, we are creating just new traditions, new just new ways for us to reconnect, but still be proud of our unique heritage and culture that we are able to recover right now. So it's just appreciation for what we do have, even though we lost a lot. We may not know for sure. We don't have like solid information of where we may have come from specifically. A lot of us were mixed up, on purpose. And so we have a lot of different places, a lot of different, things within us, but we can still make something beautiful out of it. Yeah, so we can just appreciate all of the things that go into being us.
Yeah, and on that point that you made about the mixing up, right? Which there was so much. So first of all, we were taken from different regions of the continent
Right.
before we even got put on the ships. Then on the ships, the ships didn't just leave Africa at one port and just leave Angola and come west. They went to
Hmm.
Angola, they stopped off in Ghana, they stopped off in, Sierra Leone, and then they went. So that's already three different regions of the continent. So that's
Right.
already a mix. Then you have the fact that that ship didn't just come westward and say, all right, this ship is going to Cuba and then going back. No, it stopped off dropped some people off in Cuba, dropped some people off probably at the port of Virginia, dropped some people off at a port of Lima before they made their way back to collect more of us. So that's
Right.
more mixture. Then
Mhm.
during enslavement, while we're on the actual plantations working, we're sold from Jamaica to Haiti. We're sold from Louisiana to Georgia. We're sold from Georgia to Cuba. So you don't know who you
Exactly.
like. It's so
It's
much.
impossible to know at this point, you know?
And that's what confuses me about things like ADOS,
Mm.
where you have this American descendants of slave idea, where as if we were just here the entire time once we got dropped off. And there was
Right.
no interaction and intermixing, as well as, you know, and this idea that we're keeping the reparations just for us. That's
Yeah.
not even African in the way we move. Like, that's not our original position. It's
Mhm.
all for one for all. Like,
Right.
I'm going to fight for reparations on the behalf of what America owes to its descendants and
Mhm.
what is owed to us, as well as I'm going to fight for reparations for what British owes Jamaica. I'm going to fight for
Mhm.
what France owes Haiti and Martinique. I'm going to fight for what Spain owes Peru and Colombia and Argentina. Like,
Exactly.
when I talk about reparations, I'm talking about reparations for
Exactly.
enslavement,
Right.
period. So everybody is getting on the books.
Mhm.
I'm not saying we gonna get ours and forget about them.
Right.
And so I just don't understand that idea. It's about us, coming together. This is African unity. So we're gonna and we're gonna talk about this a little bit more um down the line,
Yeah.
definitely, when
Yeah,
we
we
talk
are.
about just identifying with our blackness and what that means, and not putting limitations on where blackness exists and who is black. But we're going to jump into off that maroon topic. Yesterday, we talked about the Maroons in Jamaica, and we talked about Nanny of the Maroons. Today, we're going to talk about the Palenque. So, Binkos Bioho was a crown prince in what is today like modern day Guinea-Bissau. And
Mhm.
he was set to be king before he was kidnapped and enslaved and taken eventually to Colombia.
Mhm.
And it wasn't too long that he stayed there before he got with some people and led a lot of people to escape. And just like the Maroons in Jamaica fortified themselves in, the terrain of Colombia that was difficult for people to get to.
Mhm.
And, you know, understanding the land, understanding how to protect themselves, set up a fortified community by the name of Palencos de Basilio. And it has been recognized as, and people recognize things and dates get mixed up, but it's been recognized as the first free type society in the Western Hemisphere,
Mhm.
by like National Geographic or somewhere like that. But it's preserved and protected. And one of the things that I really like about Palenque is that they've been able to preserve themselves all the way up until present day.
Right.
But did you want to share anything about Binkos?
Oh yeah. I mean, just learn about him, like you said, he was a crown prince and was actually like ruling over territory and everything before he was captured, kidnapped, And so, and brought over to be enslaved and then sold again. He was captured by a Portuguese slave trader, and then eventually sold to Spanish. But he, like we talked about, like with Queen Nanny yesterday, established this Maroon Society, and he positioned himself to be able to help other Africans to escape slavery. And
Champions.
yes, champion, exactly. That's what I was getting to, like a true champion. He didn't just worry about, him escaping and, him and his people who he was with originally, escaping, but he made sure to keep going back so much that, it was so many of them that they ended up making, Spain ended up having to make a deal with him, to stop, okay, I'll let y'all be free as long as you stop taking, other Africans, who we are trying to enslave. And
Yeah.
I mean, it reminds me actually with in Jamaica, one of Queen Nanny's siblings, Cujo. It's funny, I always heard this name Cujo, growing up, people always make references to Cujo, but I was learning about him, and and basically the British made a deal with him, for their Maroon Society to be free. They basically leave them alone as long as he agreed to return runaways, right? And
Right.
so it's just interesting though, because they were very powerful, and they had just to establish themselves, and just have that determination to be free. Um, they were a force to be reckoned with, and they had to come to them to make an agreement, okay, these people will not just settle, they just won't accept their situation. And we can see that the pride that they carry today in Palenque.
And that's
I
the
just
struggle
love
part,
it.
right? Because when you learn about the Maroons and you learn about Palenque and you learn about the other societies, the Quilombos, you hear the same type of story where these treaties are put in place. So
Right.
the Maroons, it was so many different Maroon societies, and they eventually, had to agree to make a treaty with the English or the Spanish or the Portuguese or the Dutch, whoever, the military class was, to say, all right, we will leave the people that are already there alone, but you have to stop freeing and helping other people. And it puts you in a dilemma of, okay, we have people that we need to protect
Right.
already there. And then, but, the champion spirit is like, no, this is wrong all the way around. We have to continue to fight. But if you look at, and the thing that happens is you have to look at your military force as the Palenque, and like, okay, the Spanish, they have these reinforcements that they can come, and they probably have better weaponry, right?
Right.
So we can get them to protect ourselves, but you can only war for so long. So
Hmm.
you get to a place where it's like, okay, you have to make that agreement, because a treaty means that nobody is really getting what they want.
Right.
Right.
Right. We just gonna agree to
That's
disagree. We just gonna leave it right
a
there.
compromise is, I want all of you enslaved on the part
Hmm.
of the Europeans, and then the part of the Africans, like, I want none of us to be enslaved. So,
Right.
so they just came up with that agreement. But the fact, like you said, the point is the fact that these big military powers even had to succumb to these communities shows the strength and the fortitude of what they had,
Hmm.
um, and just the intelligence. Like, it's not just brute strength that you can,
Right.
it's not just brute strength and just speed that helped us
Hmm.
escape and
Yeah.
build these communities. It took strategy, it took planning, it took
Exactly.
intelligence. Like,
Right.
it's not like they were enslaved in Guinea-Bissau where they already knew the terrain. They had to
Right.
learn the terrain, know the path, know how to get people to the community where they
Learn how
weren't
to
followed.
communicate with each other because they weren't able to communicate with each other coming from different places.
Weren't speaking the same language exactly, which is another excellent thing about Palenque de San Basilio is that they created a language that kind of like how Swahili is created. Like a lot of people don't know that Kiswahili isn't like a native African tongue.
Right.
It was created for commerce so that people across ethnicities, across borders that Europeans created could communicate with each other and actually make business transactions and make money together. It's like, okay, we're gonna take elements of your language, elements of this language, elements of this language, so that everybody feels included.
Right.
But we can all, actually build into this one thing. So that's the same thing that they did with the Palenque, and the language is called
Palenquero. Yeah.
And they still speak Palenquero to this day. And that's like one of the elements of sustainability. And we spoke about language before, but we were just talking about this before we went on air. You were saying some interesting things, making some points.
Yeah. With the language, they being in, the Spanish colony or whatever, they're even after the fact, right? Like in modern day Colombia, right? And when you look at like we're in the school systems, same as anywhere else that we are Africans positioned, in another place, you're gonna be learning a language just like we learn English in schools, right? We're not taught native tongues, And so I was doing some research and just listening to people from Palenque talk about how they would purposely, just found the purpose in basically reinforcing this culture and practicing this language, making sure to not let it, get lost. They have to teach their children and, other people in their communities to keep this language alive because, like you said, it was created. It was something that, that they can embrace as their own. And I think it's very interesting because the guy was saying that they shouldn't consider it like a broken Spanish because the language Palenquero is like a Creole, right? Between Bantu languages and what is it, Castillo, something like that. But he was saying that you shouldn't consider it like broken Spanish. This is their language. This is something that they can embrace as their own. I relate that also to even African American vernacular English. We can claim that, you know what I mean? And it's something special to us. It's a language that we can speak. And it's funny because I use it actually as a tactic, like when I am traveling in another place, like with another a fellow Black American, we speak like in our slang. I speak like, and I can speak out loud, if we're like in a market or something, I'll use slang because I'm like, I know that they don't know exactly what I'm saying. I don't have to be like whispering or trying to do signals or something. I will speak in our language. That's like, they won't be able to comprehend it, so it's like our coded, it really is like a language that of our own that we can use because, we drop, the articles and, consonants and all kind of stuff to where it kind of like mixes up the language. It's almost like a pig Latin, and I think I have used it several times like that. That's my strategy when I'm traveling. I'm like, well, I know everyone, even if they studied English, they don't know our English like that. So I use it as a tool. And so I'm like, this is exactly the same thing. And it's something that we can embrace as well.
I realized on the language piece, I realized for the first time that I had never really been around white people until I was in Peace Corps in Africa. and I was just speaking, because most of the time when I was living in Africa, I lived in Francophone Africa. So I was speaking French all the time. So when I
Right.
got around people who understood English, I wanted to speak English, but I was
Yeah.
speaking Atlanta English
Right.
and people did not understand what I was saying. But
Right.
I wasn't even speaking full Atlanta English, right?
Yeah.
Because you can't really speak full Atlanta English unless you with another person and y'all
Mhm.
going off of each other. But I was just saying like simple little slang words like dope or this is hard. And
Mhm.
they were like hard,
Right.
like is they were truly confused. And I was thrown all the way off. But another point, my wife is from Guinea and she speaks like 5 languages, 2 European languages and 3 languages from Guinea. And
Great.
she used to, when she came over here and she started learning English, she was calling them dialects. And I was
Mm.
like, don't call your language dialects because that
Yeah.
is like coded language from linguistics people to try to undermine the value of our native tongues. Because a
Mm-hmm.
dialect is a subpar language. It's like Mandarin and Cantonese are
Cantonese.
dialects
Yeah.
of Chinese.
Right. Right.
So they are still up under the Chinese language. They just have different elements. Now, like Malinke and Manding and Bambara, they are dialects of the Manding languages, right? Of the Mande language. But Monday is a language system. So
Mm-hmm.
calling it a dialect is actually undervaluing it. Calling
For
French a
sure.
language, but then calling Pular a dialect is them teaching us to devalue ourselves. And
Right.
just like language, not understanding what these words mean, you'll be taught to undervalue yourself because you're being taught by other people. Again, controlling our own narrative. Another thing about language is the fact that it's a part of our culture, and certain things, certain ways of thought, certain ways to express ourselves only exist in certain languages built around certain types of societies.
Mm-hmm.
Where I know in English, there's a lot of times that I can't express myself in English because I don't think the word that I'm thinking of even exists in English.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? There are certain feelings that I have as an African man that I can't express in English because it's too limited.
Mm-hmm.
Because the European foundation that English is built upon doesn't have that vibe that
So
I'm
true.
trying to express. A lot of the times we're at a loss of words because the words that we're searching for don't exist. Nothing
Right.
can describe what we are trying to say in a European language because we're coming from trying to express something as an African
Mm-hmm.
and
That's so deep
understanding.
though. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's so deep. When you think about like if you ever for anybody else listening, like if you ever experience being in another place around another culture that, speaks other languages, and it seems even when we watch like watch movies with subtitles, and it's like they're saying a whole lot just to say this little bit, right? Like it's so many other words and meanings that go into these things, and it does, just like you said, it kind of, when we do adapt these these other languages, like these European languages, it is kind of, it's taking away a lot of what's actually useful in, within the statements or whatever that you're making. But just like you were talking about with the dialects though, just making sure to not minimize just parts of our culture, parts of us. It's the same thing that relates to what we were talking about the other day with labeling ourselves minorities, right? Like
right.
we are the majority, even globally, we're the majority globally.
Exactly.
So when we use this language, we are minimizing, like make sure to not minimize yourself, because it does more than it does more than just, they're not just talking about quantity when they're labeling us as
Right.
minorities, because even you'll see like in categories, like under books or different forms of art, it'll be like minority artist or minority, this and that before or, you know, referring to that
Yep.
person, you have to think like that's saying more than what
It's
you
calling
think, you know,
yourself
the
less
obvious.
than.
Exactly. Like it's, you're literally and you know, when we practice speaking, when we speak, it's, you know, like I was learning before, it was something I saw a while ago, but just thinking about how it's like, you know, a spell. When you think about a spell, which a lot of people associate with like witchcraft and, you know, this and that, it's
Mhm.
always negative. But the words that we use, they have meaning, you know, they have meaning. And we just have to be intentional about the words that we use. So just like you were saying the other day, even if it takes a few more words to say what you're trying to say,
Mhm.
spell it out, right? We are not going to shortcut each other, shortcut ourselves and minimize ourselves just to be, you know, just for the convenience of it, because it means something more. And so we need to just get in the practice of spelling it out, saying it out, you know, in the long form, to make sure that we don't, you know, cut each other off, minimize ourselves like that.
Yeah. And one of the things that I wanted to like really relish about these maroon and these Palenque societies, even though we're talking about the time and the era of enslavement,
Mm-hmm.
the existence of the Palenques and the Maroons, it makes it impossible to start our history with enslavement as a
Right.
people. That's one of the things that a lot of our elders have said, like John Henry Clark and Dr.
Mm,
Asa Hilliard, and so many people after them and before them have reiterated the same idea of don't let anyone start your history with enslavement, because
right.
then you won't call it enslavement, you will call it
Mm-hmm.
slavery. You won't call them enslaved African, you will call them slaves, and
Slaves.
you will think
Yeah.
that you are a descendant of slaves. Another
Mm-hmm.
problem I have with ADOS, because they just call themselves descendants of slaves. Where did
Right.
those slaves come from? Where
Right.
were their origins? Right?
Mm-hmm.
American descendants of slaves is so limiting. Just that's how you want to define yourself. I don't
Yeah.
get it. It doesn't sound right to me. It doesn't sit well with me. So,
Right.
but the thing is, these palenques, in when they create a language based in African languages that they all meld together so that everyone feels involved, already shows you Africa, because it
Mm-hmm.
shows that they have Africa and their home and their
Right.
culture on the mind in their
Mm-hmm.
activities, very
Mm-hmm.
upfront in what it is that they're doing. So they aren't allowing themselves to allow anybody else to define where their history started. When we talk
Right.
about Benkos, crown prince, and took that position as, okay, I'm going to be a king. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I was captured. Okay, I was enslaved. I'm going to be a king wherever I go. I'm going to lead people. I'm going to lead my people and protect them and serve them, which is one of the things that when we talk about kingdoms and kings and emperors is a lot lost in the conversations. Kings are at the service of their people.
Right.
They
Right.
are there to look out for the best interests of their people and sacrifice for what they may want for the
Mm-hmm.
good of the people. And it sounds like Binkos, when we talk about a king, was the epitome of what a king is, in
Definitely.
service of the people, a real champion. Really, he could have made a case like uh we talked about 12 years a slave of, I am not supposed to
Mm-hmm.
be here.
Right.
Like Sinke, I am not supposed to be here.
Mm-hmm.
I was wrongfully captured, right? Because there are those stories where people were able to get back to Africa because they were royalty
Right.
and said, I was wrongfully captured. Binkos did not do that. Binkos said, look, we're here together, and we're going to not only survive this situation together, we're going to escape this situation together and create something new. We're going to create Africa where we are. That's another element of the maroon within us. That's another piece of this African diaspora. When we talk about African unity, it's not about every single African in the diaspora permanently moving back to the continent. Africa is not a place. We are Africa.
Right.
Wherever we are is Africa. We
and
create
that's
new
funny.
Africa.
They actually call Palenque, like the people there, they call it a little piece of Africa in Colombia. That's so Colombia. But yeah, I mean, I think that's just so important. But that's how we're able to retain a lot of these, traditions and things that we think sometimes when we're isolated in these places, where we've been colonized, where we've been enslaved, we tend to think that it's, our experiences are unique to us. And if you think about it, from everywhere, if you ever explore other arts, explore arts in other parts of the world where there are other Black people, and especially with our same history, like in all throughout South America and through the Caribbean, and wherever you go in the world, where we had they had African enslaved ancestry. And when we look at the arts and different things, like we have such similar styles, and like our swag, everything is so closely related. And you got to think, well, how? Wow, like we are the same people. We literally have like the same blood, running through our veins a lot of times. And I think there's like a push and pull of with this whole identity thing, because this is a traumatic situation, right? Even today, even though we're so far removed from being in that position of enslavement, but we are, we definitely still feel it, right? And just this isolating feeling of and not knowing our history exactly. A lot of us only relating our history, only being taught that, like our story starts with enslavement. It contributes to so many things, but I think we just have to just remember that we came from somewhere else. We came from other people. We came from, something more than what it is. So I think it's a struggle with identity a lot of times. And then we get into this conversation of who's considered Black, because we get labels, right? So now we call each other at first, well, before us being able to call each other, call ourselves something, we were labeled all these different names. But over time we've grown to kind of like embrace a name, or claim something for ourselves. So I see a lot of conversations and disagreements now with a lot of us of darker hue, right? With with just identifying, not wanting to identify as Black or African American, or this, or African, or whatever. It's like a lot of us are even trying to move so far away from our identity. And I think, that's, you got to think about foundation. Our identity is our foundation. If you don't even know who you are or what you are, like like how can you build on top of that? I think it's a lot of disagreements with that. And it's like a lot of times we can't even get into the conversation, because like, don't call me Black, don't call me African American, don't call me African. And it's like, that's so deep though. How do we resolve that? We really keep going into this conversation.
And it's two sides to that very coin. So there are people who are clearly of African descent,
right,
that want to move themselves away from their African ancestry and deny it, right? Imitation of Life, one of the most difficult movies to watch. I've watched it twice. I watched both versions of it, and then I own the movie. I own both versions, and I will only watch it again when I have children, for them to watch it at a certain age, so that they just know that that exists right in the world. But it's not just like a film that you throw on. But then there are those people who hoard Blackness and try to keep people out. So there
Oh,
are people who voluntarily exclude themselves, and then there are people who want to make people jump through hoops to claim their own
come on
ancestry.
now. Come on now, preacher.
So
Come on.
we have to, bring both these parties together and say, hey, stop putting a limit on who is Black and where Black exists, because
Right.
I know I am an African born in the United States, right?
Mm-hmm.
So our Black Americans, we have the American media that kind of pushes us out to the world. So, and also we have the fact that we are a numerical minority in America, that our Blackness is always thrown back at us, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
always a presence, it's ever present. There are it's easy to go to a place where you may be the only Black person there.
Right.
And so
Right.
it's clearly on notice. And in other places, like the Caribbean, like, of course, Africa, you can go and exist, and your Blackness never even occurs to you
Mm-hmm.
because it just is what everybody is. So
Definitely.
I think that as Black Americans, sometimes we hoard on to Blackness because it's such a weight on us just to exist here. Our Blackness is always on our minds. And
Right.
also the fact that, American media, television, music, movies, sports gets out to everyone pretty much on a global scale, that our identity or our definition of Blackness kind of covers a lot of people. And even when people who are non-Black interact with Blackness, they are presented with Black Americans first,
Mm.
like the Chinese, like Australians, like somebody who isn't that familiar with having a lot of Black people in their, presence. They
Right.
see our musicians, our sports, our
Mhm.
athletes, our, movie stars, so on and so forth. So
Unless they
our
Nigerian, because Nigerians be getting around, boy. But Nigerians are around the world.
yeah, but it's like our overlapping definition of what Blackness is. And sometimes as a Black American, you can limit your scope to thinking that Blackness is us
Yeah.
only,
Yes.
right? So then when you interact with people who are from Latin America, who are from the Caribbean, and not the easily identifiable Black parts of the Caribbean, where we can kind of settle our minds around Haiti and
Right.
Jamaica and
Yeah.
maybe, Trinidad and some of
Yeah.
those English speaking islands, is when those
Yeah.
islands start to speak, Spanish for whatever reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
They
Very
can look
true.
just like me,
Mhm.
just like me. But if I open my mouth and I speak Spanish, then in my brain, their Blackness subsides, or it
Yep.
waters down.
Yep.
And it happens. And so that's that two-sided coin where some of them will deny their own Blackness looking like me. Some of them look like me and accept their Blackness, but then a Black American will say, well, are you really Black?
Right. Right. And that's the
And
thing too. Like it's just so that goes so deep. Like I think a lot of people, and I'm speaking, from my experience as a Black American and socializing with mostly Black Americans. Um,
Mhm.
I hear that. Well, I get this sense of, like that there's this attitude towards people, and it does, just like you pointed out, it's mostly those, with African ancestry who happen to speak Spanish, right? They come from more, Spanish speaking countries. And I think there's this attitude though of, well, they don't want, a good number of them don't want to be identified as Black, and so they're not Black. And it's like, you can't sit there and pick apart someone's identity. You can't, just because some of them, just like some, that, we'll just say like Dominicans or, some, because that conversation always comes up, even with people coming at Cardi B, who has spoken about publicly, because she gets a lot of these comments of people, like, oh, you're just trying to be black, you're not even black, and this and that, you speak Spanish. And she's given her history, and saying that she knows that, she comes from black people too, like she knows the history of the place that where her people came from. And but you get a lot of like this attitude of like, well, a lot of them don't want to be considered black, and so they're not black. And it's like, well, we don't get to actually do that. That's not how the genetic, thing works. That's not how science even works. So, just leave that alone. We need to like just build this bridge of like understanding. And I think it's a personal journey, like for a lot of us too.
Definitely.
And like I spoke about a little bit earlier about the a lot of us not wanting to identify. We'll even take our spiritual beliefs and different things to kind of pull away from our blackness, from our Africanness, and we would try to attach ourselves to anything but. And it is also important to just acknowledge the fact, like even while we're talking about maroon societies and stuff, the African people that were kidnapped and brought to these different places to be enslaved, they were also assisted by and joined forces with the natives, like the Tainos, the the natives that in the North America and everything. We worked together, right, to escape this situation, because we weren't the only ones. You got to think about, before the Europeans even start bringing this over there, in large numbers, they killed them off. And so they were also, they already had that strained relationship with the Europeans. And so a lot of us, we joined forces to come together, and like the natives would help the Africans who were escaping enslavement. And so I think also we got to just consider, like, we are a mixture of a lot of different things. I have, family. I learned in my great grandmother's funeral that, we also have a mix of, of Native Americans in our family as well. And that's a lot of our stories when you look at a lot of us, because I know a lot of times we think about like other people that come from like the Caribbean and, this and that. We just automatically think like, oh, well, they must be, mixed with the Europeans. You also got the natives, who they mixed with. I was watching something on, I was watching a documentary a couple days ago on, in Mexico, and how like the Mayans and, and a lot of people, actually, when I was in Mexico, and I was in Yucatan, and I was somewhere like in the city part, and just speaking to a few people, and a lot of them also identify with like it's a lot of like African roots, even in those parts, and people can relate to those different parts of them. And it's like, just like for us, we can't pinpoint exactly where we came from, but we can embrace all of Africa. We can embrace all of us, black people around the world. And like, why we can't sit there and do that to other, we can't pick apart that identity, other people's identity, just because of our limited knowledge on, on where they came from and their heritage.
Yeah, and we can't take the fact that the people like Sammy Sosa, who clearly, was not satisfied with his identity and ethnicity, we can't take that and paint this broad brush that, okay, because it's been broadcast that some of them don't identify with their blackness, that we're just gonna erase all of them. No, if people actually want to identify with their ancestry, then we welcome them in. On the point of the native admixture, like the Seminole Society, like the Seminole wasn't even that was an amalgamated native group, because Seminoles, if you study them, they were a new group of escaped enslaved people and native peoples, and they created a new Seminole society. Seminoles is the mixture of African and Native people.
Yeah.
I don't remember what the original like tribe of those Native people were, but they weren't originally just called Seminoles.
Mm-hmm.
That is when they, partnered up with African peoples in
Yeah.
that Florida region, that Spanish-owned Florida region,
Mm-hmm. It's
to
such a
create that
complex
and
history.
fortify themselves. And it was so much, stuff going on. People who were being oppressed and objectified at the same time saw
Mm-hmm.
solitude with each other and, built onto that. So like you said, in these palenques, in these maroon societies, you will hear them talking about partnering up with the Taino people and actually fortifying themselves. And probably a part of that strategy, a part of learning the land, came from those people who were already there
Yeah.
helping them. So,
Yeah.
And I just wanted to kind of hone in on that strategy. ASAP is a show about embracing strategy, embracing patience, understanding how to put these plays into action and make it sustainable. So, understanding that, again, just wanting to stress, this did not happen just because we were, athletically advanced. This did not
Right.
just happen because we were, you
Because we got
know,
them hands. Because
right,
we
because we were physically stronger and just brute
right.
strength. This was intelligence, because a lot of the times when we talk about ourselves, when we talk about our history, when we talk about our resistance, the intellectual factor is left out,
Right.
right? They try to diminish our level of intellect because they are judging it based on what they know.
Right.
So when we learn from their textbooks, they're always going to try to limit or diminish our accomplishments or what we did. Like when we learn about Black history, what we learn about? We learn about the Black firsts. The first person to do this, the first person to do that, blah, blah, the first Black person to get this. And it's usually the first Black person to fill a position that was filled by white people in the previous, to show that we are just following up behind them. But
Right.
understanding that we created our own, that we fortified ourselves, that we were able to protect ourselves. These are things that I just want to make sure that we are understanding the importance of every level of this, of the
Mm-hmm.
strategy, of the strength, true enough, of the military savvy, but of the attitude of togetherness, of putting the whole before the one. One of the
Right.
things that help these communities stay fortified is that they saw the whole collective more important than the one.
Yes.
Individualism is, necessary and is good to be who you are, but seeing yourself as the whole, especially in times of severe tragedy and trauma,
Mm-hmm.
seeing us as the whole helps us sustain ourselves and get through. And
Definitely.
again, seeing things holistically. It doesn't mean that, your brain isn't its own entity and your heart isn't its own entity, but they have to function together. If your brain
Exactly.
is fully functional and your heart stops, doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right.
Like,
Exactly. That's the thing though. It's like we are whole beings. Even when we talk about injustice, period, when we're talking about striving for justice and equality and and all of these different things, we are also we got to think about when we ask people to put aside, different parts of them in order to just meet one goal. We can meet that goal while respecting and acknowledging all of us as our whole selves. I cannot take away my womanness just because we're fighting for our blackness. I am a black woman. I'm going to be fighting as a black woman alongside black men and black, gender, just not identifying, people who don't want to
mhm.
identify with either gender or, whatever your other parts of you are. Like we are whole people. We cannot sit there and pick apart it, just any part of it. It's our identity, and
Yep.
I think we have this like idea, with his problem with like oppression Olympics, and well, just kind of, well,
Yeah.
you don't really, you can, and I think it's also not understanding different people's experiences. We jump to conclusions, or we want to, when it's convenient for us, we want to rely on scientific information, or what's not yet classified as scientific information, not being confirmed as scientific, and things to try to justify, or unjustified what people's existence, and just different parts of them. It's just like we have to get past all of that and just see each other for who we are, like as whole people, and understand like where we need to go, to accomplish this stuff. And it slows us up if we're picking apart and trying to argue, and and say, even when we talk about like this, identifying with who's considered Black and who's is like, we have to move past all this, man.
Yeah, and on that, I did want to bring up like a current event that just has been happening, like the tennis player Naomi Osaka. So she's been wearing different masks every game. Well, I think she don't wear it during the game, but pre-game, and then actually in the interviews, I think she still wears them post-game. And she's worn 7 so far, and she made the statement, the fact that I've already worn 7. The fact that there are still more is just ridiculous in itself. And she's, wants to continue winning so that she can try to wear all of them, because she went all the way back to Trayvon. She wore Trayvon Martin. She's worn Ahmaud Arbery. She's worn Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and so many other names. But so she actually got a video tribute, like a surprise from Trayvon Martin's mother, who thanked her, and Ahmaud Arbery's father, who thanked her for what she's doing and continuing to bring attention. And again, on that conversation about celebrity and athletes, and how they can use their platform to bring more attention to what's going on. But there was a little bit of controversy in how someone reacted to what she was doing. And liberal white people, sometimes they get themselves into a bind because they just don't understand that some of the way that they say things just comes off the wrong way. So she was being interviewed by some Australian ex-tennis player. Her name isn't important to me, so I didn't choose to remember it. But she was being interviewed. Naomi Osaka was being interviewed by this ex-tennis player on ESPN, and she was talking about her mask, and she said something to the effect of, we've been enjoying the masks that you've been wearing, and I've been, trying to guess which name would appear on the masks next. So, and, on the surface, you can see that it's not like she was demeaning her or even the mask wearing with the names. So she wasn't out on some alt-right conservative stuff, but these are names of people who unjustly lost their lives. And to frame it in a way that, we've been enjoying the mask that you've been wearing, and I've been trying to guess who you were gonna wear next.
Like it's a game.
Yeah, that's the insensitivity and the privilege to not even be able to notice how insensitive that statement is. Just goes to our point of when we talk about white privilege and what that is. So she got blasted on Twitter, this woman, the interviewer, and like she was confused. She didn't
Because you
understand
could
why
have
people
taken
were
that
mad.
opportunity. You could have taken that opportunity to say something like, I hope they get justice, or I
Right,
think it's great that you highlighting these people, highlighting this
right.
injustice, and that is a problem. She could have taken that so many different places, but she chose to.
Probably
That was very insensitive. I think it was kind of it was thoughtless. It was
right. The
to be
thoughtlessness.
interviewing. Yeah, I mean because that's an important topic right there. That's something.
Yep.
She's making that a mission
And that's the
to make
thing,
that
right?
statement before every game, and you say that. Just
To not understand how that comes across is
right.
privilege.
Yeah.
That's what you do when you are privileged. Like
Right.
you have, who was it? Marie Antoinette that said, "Let them eat cake when her people were hungry." It was like, if they had the ingredients to make cake, they probably would be making bread. Like, let them eat cake. From a position of privilege, you just say insensitive stuff,
Right. Right.
even if it's not your intention to be that. Like, I'm not on here calling this woman out of her name, and I'm calling her privileged and insensitive. And I
Mhm.
understand that when you are from that place that you don't understand the struggle, that you can say some stuff just very nonchalantly and not really. She probably had the best of intentions. What you said she should have said is
Yeah.
probably what she wanted to say, but didn't know how to say it in that
Mm.
respectful way. Right?
Right. Yeah, that's the thing is like, I don't necessarily think her intentions were bad, just like
Right.
you said, but it was just, you got to think about a lot of things, like, especially now. Well, where are you? This is 2020. It's so much stuff, like just the climate alone. And that's what lets me know that, like, not speaking to this woman
Mhm.
specifically, but a lot of times, even when you hear a lot of politicians and just other people making statements, and they know the climate. They know when you see it, just like I was saying the other day with I saw I was saying something like with all of this stuff going on, police are still murdering unarmed Black people. And it's just like they mean to
Still.
do some of that stuff. They mean to do it because the reaction is going to cause, what could potentially happen is going to blow up. They're doing it on, some of them are doing and saying these things on purpose. They know what they mean. They know that, the attention, the
This
everything that's
Jacob
going to
Blake
go
incident
behind it.
happened after a summer full of protests, and they still found reason to shoot this man 7 times in the back. Right?
Yeah.
This is not like Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd all happened Ahmaud Arbery happened in February, but no one knew
Yeah.
about it, right?
Right.
But the police killed Breonna Taylor and George Floyd. Those stories came out around the same time. So it's
Hmm.
not like the protest had already started, right?
Right.
We've been through a year full of protests almost,
The
of
biggest
people,
world news, pretty much.
right? And they still shot Jacob Blake 7 times in the back. Like, I don't care what you're doing. If your back is turned to somebody, there's no reason to be shot multiple times.
Right.
Like, not even a warning. But that's just to the point of how insensitive this thing is. We're talking about sustainable communities. We're talking about, see, the reason we're talking about this maroon within us is we're talking about the resistance. We're talking about that there's no point in history, no matter what they try to tell you in, different movies, that we were just happy sitting on
Right.
plantation smiling. That was
Right.
never the case. We always
And then we just
resisted. So
accepted it. Hmm.
the resistance that we see happening right now has always been in us, and not just in us as Black Americans, in us as
Right.
people of African descent throughout the African diaspora, throughout our history.
Hmm.
And what this does, to reiterate, the Palenques, the Maroon societies, the Quilombos, all draw from their African culture, and they don't allow themselves to be dictated to by where they currently exist.
Right.
They retroactively, or they retrofit where they are to suit them,
Yes.
not
Yes.
suit themselves to where they are. And that's
Mhm.
where we as African people, no matter where we are, have to do. That's what I believe that we are doing right now, which is, you know, very good to see. I like
Mhm.
seeing that. I like seeing the
Yeah.
pushback. We will not be, moved. One of the things about Palenque, though, our last point, is that they are still today a sustainable community. One of the reasons that they are a sustainable community is that they don't speak Spanish there.
Right.
When you come to their part of town, when you come to Palenque de San Basilio, you are speaking Palenquero, and they don't care if you
Right.
understand or not. You can
Right.
leave. As a matter of fact, you have to leave. If you're not
Yeah.
from there, when the sun goes down, you can't spend the night lest
Mm.
you are well connected with somebody who is, with some authority. Like I have a
Yeah.
friend who, is a Black American, African born in the United States, who
Mm.
went to Colombia specifically to visit Palenque, my sister Afia Reina, and she was fortunate enough to be able to spend the night, but very rare exception,
Mhm.
because they understand the importance of sustaining their culture,
Right.
of how rare it is for them to be identified as the first free society of that kind and still be able to sustain themselves to this day with their own
Yeah.
language, with, fortified, walls of the city and all these different things. And when you go to Colombia, you have to know somebody who knows where Palenque is, because you're not just gonna find it. You're not just gonna
Yeah.
run up on it. Like you gotta get somebody who knows how to get there, somebody who has access to get in just to
Right.
get there. So when we talk about sustainable communities, even in the context of our present day, we have to think like that. That's
Definitely.
strategy.
That I was just about to say, that's the one strategy that we definitely have to, I mean, just adapt. And even when we think about from the beginning, right, as these maroon societies were coming up, they sometimes, a lot of times, with the help of the natives, again, even figured out, just how to live off of the land, how to, the medicines and things that they found, on the land. They were new to these places, right? They didn't know, they had to learn and adapt to these new places that they were in, and establishing themselves in. And so you just got to think about all of the things that goes into it. It definitely is intelligence, a lot of intelligence that goes into it. You got to think about how, like, if you get sick out there, you're running away, right? You escaping this situation. How are you going to survive? What are you going to eat? How are you going to learn to cook and just take care of yourself? That also goes into, being able to sustain yourself as a independent society, separating yourself. And so we thinking about these types of things even as African people born in America, who are choosing to stay in America, if our if and when, because just, I bet you, if we were to try to separate ourselves, we will have a lot of our luxuries and things that we're used to cut off, unless we
Mhm.
know how to build and sustain it ourselves. We can't be, don't be silly about this situation, right? Like, these people don't want to, like, they won't want to let us win, right? And it's going to be on our own self-determination and our own
Yep.
just intelligence again, and everything else. We have to know how to survive. I think that's why I really appreciate also being in other environments, especially, like, being younger and traveling solo, when I was in my backpacking travel stage, and just learning to adapt. And I remember the first time, like, just having to take a bucket bath, and just figure out just other little things, like luxuries, things that I didn't even
Right.
think about. I definitely took for granted. living in the States,
Mm-hmm.
but putting myself in a different environment to where I have to adapt. And I just think it's really just important for us to get used to these ideas and even, practice it, do a little bit, even, like camping, some stuff like that. We need to get
Yeah.
more acquainted with experiences like that are just outside, like learn how to really sustain
You better believe that they did not fortify themselves in some mountains without hiking. And they
Okay.
didn't have no Timberlands either. So,
Right.
like, this,
Barefoot.
right. So I remember the first time I took a bucket bath was in Haiti. And
Mm,
like the bucket baths that I took when I was living in Africa, I had my own bucket,
yeah.
right? But in Haiti, I was with a family. And so it was just one big bucket. So you had to be mindful that there are people
Yeah.
after you. So you
Mm-hmm.
can't use all the water. Make sure that
Mm-hmm.
you don't put soap back in the clean water because
Right.
somebody has to use that after you. So even just that mindset, you have to care about other people. You have
Definitely.
to be considerate just in your everyday activities. To wash my hands in Haiti, somebody had to pour the water on my hands, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we needed each other. I needed two people just to wash my hands adequately.
Yeah.
We needed each other. That
Mhm.
is the only way we're going to be able to build these sustainable communities, is to
Hello.
realize how much we need each other, to lean on one another, to move away from this personal space idea. That's a very Western concept. Trust me, it really
Mhm.
don't exist outside the US, honestly.
I'm telling you,
Um,
personal space don't exist outside.
and just the need for other people and
Yeah.
how we trust and lean on each other for basic activities
Yes.
is going to pull us together so close in it that we can actually do this. It can be done. It's being
Yes.
done.
Exactly.
And so
Exactly.
that's the thing that we need when we have this mindset of being not satisfied with very unsatisfactory situations that we're being faced with as Black people.
Yeah.
Like, it's very
Mhm.
understandable, but we have to understand the sacrifices that it's going to take for us to survive on our own and be willing to take the voluntary sacrifice, not
Definitely.
sacrifice our freedom in the long run, sacrifice on the front end.
Yes.
And we'll get past that stage. We'll be able to develop certain things, but we
Mhm.
have to make that sacrifice on the front end of
Mhm.
our conveniences, of the
Yes.
amenities that we've, kind of pampered ourselves with. Like,
Even
get
the
you.
thought of not wanting to give up some, like, just in leisure, just talking about just like leisure activities and different, you can't sacrifice not watching a game. You can't sacrifice not giving someone else your money because you like some, like, if we if we need to
Mhm.
get someplace, we just really have to think
Yeah.
about sacrifice and get comfortable with the idea of going without, especially when it's a choice that you can make yourself. Exercise that right, because guess what? If you're put in that position to where you are actually fighting, um, for it, and it'll be taken away from you, you won't have that choice,
Yeah.
right? So just think about, like, we should get in the habit um just like trying to go without, just sacrificing on, like, using our own, making that decision to sacrifice on our own before we
Mhm.
don't have that choice to, whether we sacrifice
Right.
or not, because we do have
Make
to. I mean, it's
sacrifices a
going to be a life.
choice.
Right. Like with our time, with everything.
Mhm.
It's so many different things. When we talk about supporting Black businesses, and even if you got to go out of your way, even if you got to spend $1 more, like, we just have to really be intentional. I'm constantly trying to push that to friends and family. Like, just let's be more intentional. I'm constantly reminding myself we have to be more intentional about everything that we're doing. What is the end goal? What do we want to accomplish? And it does help to see other societies who have already modeled that. Like you said, when we're highlighting these maroon societies, look at how they came from our same experience, the same experience that our ancestors in North America, wherever we experienced, or our ancestors and elders experienced these different things.
Mhm.
They had the same experience, and look at what they made of themselves. Look at how they sustain themselves. It is
Yep.
very possible. Even today, it's not too late. We can still just, we have to figure out a lot of things, but look at all the different components that goes into it. We have to cooperate with each other. We have to
Yep.
trust and love each other. It can't be just that conditional love. You have to just
Right.
really, come together.
hmm So there's so much that we have to do. There's so much to be done, but the encouraging part, there's so much that is being done
Yeah.
from organizations like African Unity Initiative and other organizations and other
Mhm,
individuals and other groups of people. Like,
mhm.
there is so many levels of positivity and hopefulness that is happening right now. It's not just
Yeah.
all hopeless. It's not
Mhm.
how we leave. That's not what ASAP is about. This is a
Right.
playbook. Like, we're showing you the plays that has been done, and like with Palenque today, plays that's still being done. You can
Mhm.
go visit Palenque today, something that
Yeah.
was, set up and fortified way back in the 1800s that has lasted today, right?
Mhm.
So there's so much that we can learn from understanding the past, but not looking to the past to hold on to it and sulk,
Mhm.
but be
Right.
encouraged by it and move forward.
Yes. For sure.
So,
We have to be like that. And that's why I think it's important, again, when we just highlight this history, it's for us to be inspired by it and see how we can follow it and create something for ourselves now, and not
mhm,
give up. We can't even thinking that some methods and things didn't work. We can try it again, right? We have different, again, like I always like to say, we have access to a lot more resources and opportunities and different things that our elders and ancestors didn't have back then. So just imagine if we only made up our minds and really, you know, a really good number of us just put our minds to it and just
yep,
imagine what we can accomplish.
yep,
Yeah, I
critical
think, yeah,
mass.
yeah, for sure. Right. You can't, because everybody will not be on the same page.
Mm-mm.
That's not, yeah, we ain't gonna play ourselves
It's
thinking
just
that,
like
but
numerically impossible. Like,
yeah,
even in Africa, there are
yeah,
so many ethnic groups, because these ethnic groups came because, okay, I was a part of this group. I want to do things a little bit differently. That's why so
mm,
many groups speak the same language. It's because
yeah,
I just had a minor disagree. I just needed my own space.
right.
And when I go across the river, but they still related to each other. Those two
Yeah,
groups
that's
still
so
know each
funny
other.
though. That's true.
It's just like, look, man. And so, yeah, we're gonna come together, but then there's still gonna be parts of us. Just like I encourage people, there we are Africa, right?
Mm,
We, the people, are Africa. So if I do encourage everybody of African descent to at least significantly spend time on the continent. But
mhm.
everybody doesn't have to repatriate permanently, right?
Right, right.
First of all, ain't enough space, not enough resources, and is gonna be too jumbled. So we can recreate Africa. We can retrofit where we are to become
Wherever we are.
Africa, right?
Mhm.
Wherever we are. Learn the elements, visit the homeland, just like Muslims, they take a voyage to Mecca.
It's
Every
a
person of
mission in their
African
life.
descent
Mhm.
needs to make a Mecca type pilgrimage to whatever region of the continent.
Mhm.
And then you go back and you do Africa in your life where you are, right?
Right.
And that is how, African Unity Initiative sees African unity. That's how we see the diaspora. The diaspora is Africa.
Mhm.
So this is what we are building, and we hope that you continue to join us. Michelee, let the people know how they can support you. You can support Black business right here, right now.
Yeah, I got a lot of good stuff coming up. I'm about to start, putting out new items and things that you can find on my website, mishmashworld.com, like you see on the screen, and follow me on my Instagram page for my business at Mishmash World, and on IG. And you can follow me on my personal Twitter and Instagram accounts at Michelee the Maker. You want to be in touch.
Yep. And as always, you can find African Unity Initiative at africanunity.us to be financially involved in our projects, to volunteer with any of our projects, and just to inquire about how you can, add on ideas or be a part of even some of these streaming shows that we do. Ideas that you have that can make our work that much more impactful. We are on social media everywhere at African Unity. We are looking to actualize African Unity, meaning making it tangible, African Unity in something that you can do, something that you can participate in. And so we hope that you guys enjoyed this. We will see you around the same time tomorrow. We love you guys. Peace.